What's up, guys? Wes Pruitt. You're sitting down at the sports buffet right now. We got a plate full for you again today on Wednesday. We're going to start with a little Final Four talk on the men's side. We'll break it all down. Got John Sturdivant coming on with me this morning. Right after John, talk a little NCAA basketball. We got Eli Savoy from Sports 56 there in Memphis, Tennessee. Come on to talk a little Ole Miss baseball as the Tigers of Memphis took on Ole Miss last night. And then it's a very interesting matchup coming up for Ole Miss this weekend. So we'll get all into that and more with Eli. And then following Eli, like I said, we got a jam-packed show. Following Eli, we got Tyler Springs, voice of the Memphis women's basketball team, coming on to talk Lady Tigers hoops and talk a little bit about the season this year under new head coach. And then as well, talk a little bit of women's Final Four as that tournament's been interesting to say the least. Then we'll take a quick break. When we come back from that break, we'll finish up with a little MLB talk and a little minor league talk as we talk White Sox, talk a little Cardinals, talk a little Northwest Arkansas Naturals as they just released their roster moments ago. And then we'll talk a little Memphis Redbirds to close. All that and more today on the Sports Buffet right here on the 4-Star Sports Radio Network. Let's get into it. All right, guys. So welcome in John Sturdivant. John, what's up, buddy?
Man, this Wednesday Hump Day edition of the 4-Star Sports Buffet.
Yeah, no doubt, man. No doubt. So before we start, let me go ahead and throw this little thing up on here. And that is the 4-Star Sports Media SeatGeek promo code. All of us here at 4-Star Sports Media use SeatGeek, and we want you to as well. Easy, simple way to do it. Go over to SeatGeek.com, or you can download the app on your mobile device. Start you an account, and when you do, John, you can go find you any ticket, $50 or more, and type in that promo code you see right there on the screen, 4-Star Sports Media. And just by doing that, it'll take $20 off your first purchase with SeatGeek. It's a great tool to use. I love the app. It's more than just sports, John. There's tickets, there's plays, you can go to the Orpheum there in Memphis and get tickets off there. Numerous ways to get tickets through SeatGeek.
I mean, I even use SeatGeek a lot lately, to be honest with you. Like within the last 5 years, I probably use them at least once a year, twice a year even. And I think, to be honest with you, SeatGeek is one of the best ticket options out there because, not only do you get to zoom in to see where your seats are going to be on the website, they're kind of like Ticketmaster, where you can actually zoom in on the website and see where your ticket seats are chose from, and whatnot as well. So that's one reason SeatGeek is one of the best options out there, in my opinion.
Completely agree, man. Go to SeatGeek right now. Find your ticket, $50 or more. Type in 4-Star Sports Media. That's the number 4, not the word. The number 4-Star Sports Media, all capital letters, and we will save you $20 off your first purchase. Well, John, let's get into it, man. It's been a wild March Madness, and now we're down to the Final Four. Haha, funny. Final Four. Uh, two number ones, UConn and Purdue. And then you've got number 4, Alabama. Then you've got Cinderella still wearing the shoes, number 11, NC State. So, John, just to start real quick here, before we got Eli Savoy coming on at the bottom of the hour. It's 11:24 right now. On the bottom of the hour, we got Eli Savoy coming on talking Ole Miss baseball. But John, real quick, on the Final Four, I guess my question is, can Go DJ? That's my DJ Burns. Lean up a little bit on Zach Edey and get him into something that he hadn't gotten into all year, and that's foul trouble, and possibly beat Purdue to continue the Cinderella run.
Man, baby Zebo, you mean? Baby Zach Randolph versus baby or older generation Yao Ming now. I just hope the referees call it better like than they have been the last couple ball games, to be honest with you, because that Edey is getting away with a lot of overbacks at times. And also is definitely getting away with a lot of elbows, as well. But I think it's going to be tough because not only Purdue sharing the basketball on the offensive side of the ball, but their defense is playing pretty well as of late, where they're actually getting a lot of turnovers on the steals and whatnot. And it's going to be tough for North Carolina State, but hopefully North Carolina State can run up and down the floor with the talented Purdue guards, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's two very, very interesting matchups. I'm continuing to root for NC State. The run they made in the ACC tournament was incredible. They're continuing it now. I saw a stat yesterday that said they are looking to be an 11 seed, which is the lowest seed that has made the Final Four. They can possibly win it as the lowest seed, I think, ever to win it. Mm-hmm. And then you go back and you look at the last time they were in the Final Four and made it this far. There was a very famous coach by the name of Jim Valvano, who was their coach. And of course, we know he gave the famous quote of "Don't give up. Don't ever give up." Jimmy V is still living through NC State right now because they're not giving up. I love it. I think it's the story of the tournament, obviously. And then on the other side, another story is you've got UConn and Dan Hurley just running roughshod through the entire tournament again. Can they be stopped? I mean, Mike Greenberg, bless his heart, went on his show and jokingly, and said it numerous times, jokingly, sarcasm here, folks, said, I think UConn can make the Eastern Conference playoffs. I mean, obviously that's a joke. People ripped him all over the internet, all over the podcast world. Greeny does a great job every day on ESPN Radio, and he's been doing it so long. Come on now, people. Do y'all honestly believe that man thinks that UConn? Come on, let's be serious here. But John, one thing about their opponent, and that's the Alabama Crimson Tide. Another good story. Never been in the Final Four. They're now. We know how Nate Oates operates, and that's all gas, no brakes. Shoot from as deep as you can, and we're gonna make them. If they do that at a successful rate, and as we've seen, they can do it. But then now you add in Grant Nelson, a young kid from North Dakota State, absolute talent, can step out and hit it, can body you down low. Alabama, I think, poses a major threat to UConn and their magical run.
I guess there's always a good thing that Nate Oates got that contract extension during the SEC basketball tournament, where he signed it off probably during that time, where he signed like a 7-year contract extension with Alabama, possibly. But yeah, you said it. They live or die from the 3-point line because, hey, they've been 37% from the three, but they're making 11 of them on the year on an average per game. And I think that's where, like, it could be coming down to that. And that game on Saturday afternoon or Saturday night where it could come down. And Alabama's also sharing the basketball. And that's what I love about Alabama right now. They're averaging 16 assists as of right now as well. And they're also rebounding that basketball pretty well as well of late on the offensive glass as well. And I think where you're going to stop UConn, though, is it's the same thing with NC State and Purdue. You're going to have to keep UConn's big man off the offensive glass to have a real shot and beat them up and down the floor. And I think this game is going to be coming down to the wire. Maybe it could come down to like a 4 to 6 point game, about a minute left. Like it kind of might remind you of the Texas A&M and Houston game where Houston led by like 12 points with about a minute and a half to go, and then A&M just completely came back and rallied to go to overtime. I can see that game being like that, in my opinion, because Alabama's got the guard play to compete with UConn's guards.
I don't think either one of these games are going to be blowouts. I think both of these games are going to be very, very close, very, very competitive. And, I mean, I'm not trying to be that guy, but it would not shock me one bit to see the national championship game between NC State and Alabama.
Right.
Because in this tournament, we have seen a la Kentucky, a la Kansas, a la Auburn, a la numerous other teams, and it happens yearly. There's teams that are in this tournament that may not, quote unquote, deserve to be there, but they're playing good enough basketball right now to still be there. And two of those teams, obviously all four, but they're two out of the four are number one seed. So obviously the 11 seed. I mean, NC State just has come out of nowhere. But it's more than just DJ Burns, though, John. I mean, they've got guards that can play. They've got guys that can hit shots. The other thing is, I believe 3 out of the 4 coaches have all been plucked from the high school ranks.
That's just crazy.
I mean, that's interesting to me. And we're waiting on Eli Savoy to come on. We've got Eli coming on here shortly. Talk Ole Miss baseball. Massive game last night for Memphis.
How do you feel that the officials have officiated these tournaments games so far? Because, you know, like the Tennessee-Purdue game, like where they called pretty much a lot of questionable fouls on Tennessee, in my opinion, where Tennessee basically, you know, didn't really get a good shot at it because next thing you know, there's like 7 fouls called for them in the second half, 5 minutes into the second half. How do you feel like the officials have called everything overall in this NCAA tournament?
I mean, I feel like officiating all the way across the board has been a little, I don't want to use the word suspect because that makes it seem like a connotation of like rigged or something like that, and I don't think that's the case. I think, honestly, I think that it's just we are paying more attention to how games are being called. Now, I will say this. Edey the other night, I feel like, had a damn tent set up in the camp. Like, I mean, in the paint. Like, he was camping out. But the other thing is this, and I mean, I was talking to somebody else yesterday, and they brought up this point. It's a great point. When teams are having to double team him and trying to front him and, you know, guard him from behind simultaneously, a lot of times it's going to give the illusion that he's moving, but he's not. There's people just moving around him. I mean, this is going to be a very interesting Final Four, and I do want to go look and see who the officials are. I haven't done that yet, because I'm very interested to see how these 4 games or these games between these 4 teams will be called. Because thus far in this tournament, you've had some games that were a little questionable. First, one of the first stats I look at is free throw shooting, and is there a major disparity? When you look at the Purdue Tennessee game, major disparity between the two teams. So, you know, I would like to see it be a little more. I would like to see the 3 in the key called the traveling for dang sure. Palming the ball hasn't been called in 10 years. I mean, you know what I mean? There's so many. We could sit here and nitpick it all day long. Over the back is just like holding to me in football. There is over the back on just about every single play. And a lot of it is, no offense to Zach Edey, but the guy's 7 foot and he can't help it. Maybe he's not trying to be over the guy's back. He's just naturally over it because he's that tall. I mean, you know, I think there's a lot of fouls that are called and things that are called that we could definitely nitpick. But John, let's jump over to our next topic. Little college baseball. Ole Miss had a heck of a game last night with the University of Memphis. And we've got a guy out of Sports 56. They call him Stats for a reason. Eli Savoy, to me, is probably one of the most knowledgeable people of Ole Miss athletics. Period. John, would you agree?
Yeah, because he does basketball, he does baseball road trips. When DK's not available, he does pretty much everything for Ole Miss behind the scenes a little bit. He does a lot of basketball and baseball. So, Eli, welcome back to our show.
Thanks, guys. How you doing?
Good.
Doing good, Eli. So let's start with the Ole Miss Rebels last night, taking one on the chin, 9-4 to Memphis on the road there at FedEx Park. Talk a little bit about that game last night and what you saw from both ball clubs.
Well, the thing with Ole Miss, it's once again a case of pitching issues, and they've had some pitching issues really all year long, and it really goes back to last year as well. They've had key injuries to the starting rotation, which has really hurt the depth of the pitching. And then last night in a midweek game, the bullpen gives up 5 in the 8th inning, and that's kind of been that's been their issue is, and also it's a little bit of some of the guys offensively, some of the transfer guys, they were very active in the portal and putting together a new lineup this past year. And a couple of those guys where there were high expectations haven't produced the way I think they had hoped they would. So, you look at the series they just had against Kentucky. Now they lose to Memphis, and now they're headed to Arkansas for a series there. That's not exactly a great recipe going into the Arkansas series with a 4-game losing streak.
Yeah, Baum Walker's not a easy place to just walk into and get wins, especially in 2024. Go ahead, Eli.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, and especially with a pitching staff that's struggling a little bit. They gave up 15 on Sunday to Kentucky. Got beat up a little bit in that series, and now having to face Arkansas, the number 1 team in the country. Yeah, that's not a good place to go to have your pitching staff try and get right.
Eli, what do you think about the problem regarding, like, early in the season, you got to go to Hawaii? I know it's still been a factor, regarding Ole Miss baseball as of late. Listening to the radio broadcast yesterday, it seemed like they're still struggling leaving people on base. Is that why, do you think, like, the transfer kids aren't producing, or what's really going on behind leaving people on base lately?
Yeah, that's, early in the year, there was a lot of that in that Hawaii series. They had a ton of base runners, and they, it was just that has been part of it is they can't come up with that timely hit. That series in Hawaii, they drew a ton of walks, got hit by pitches. It seemed like there was constantly base runners, but it was always, that somebody, they could never quite get that key hit with a man in scoring position. They got better for a while in that, but that's something that I think can rear its ugly head. But I think Trayson Hughes is a guy who came in and was named a preseason All-American by a couple of publications. He hasn't hit nearly to the level they thought he was going to hit yet. Luke Hill hasn't hit to the level they thought he would hit to this point. So I think the depth of their lineup. Campbell Smithwick, the freshman catcher who they brought in, who hit. Was a great high school hitter. I think they thought even as a freshman, he would hit better than he has. So The lineup just hasn't been as deep, I think, as they thought it was going to be. And who knows, those guys may still turn it around and get going. Certainly there's a track record of all of them, a couple of those at the college level. And with Smithwick, who was just a great high school player, maybe they get it all figured out. But, when you've got the injuries to the pitching staff, so your pitching depth isn't what it's supposed to be, it puts a lot of pressure on that offense. And to have some guys not producing, it's made it difficult overall on Mike Bianco.
Speaking of Bianco, Eli, in my opinion, he's one of the best coaches in the SEC. I think when you look at his wins, it speaks for itself. As to that being a straight fact. When you look at, you got the national championship a couple years back and you missed the postseason. What is it about this Bianco team that you think can possibly come into Fayetteville this weekend and maybe even make some noise?
Yeah, again, there's a ton of talent on that offensive side of the ball. I think that's what has to give them confidence up and down that lineup. There are guys, again, most of those guys they got out of the transfer portal, pretty much all of them, had produced at a high level. Now, some of that was at a lower level. You get a guy from Mercer like Hughes, things like that. Now, so you don't know what they can do, step up into SEC competition. But you have to hope they can turn it around. Again, the starting pitching, man, it's hard for them, I think, right now in the SEC. When you go back to, obviously, the Hunter Elliott injury from last year and the fact that he's still out. You threw in Xavier Rivas, who they lost before this season, and then they lost JT Quinn this year. When you're losing weekend starters to injury one after another, competing in the SEC is going to be difficult. It's difficult enough if you have all your weekend starters. When you're losing weekend starters, and you're got to throw basically midweek guys on the weekends in the SEC, that becomes a real recipe for disaster.
Are you kind of surprised at the way that Grayson Saunders' year has slowly been up and down? Because right now he's with a 3-3 record with a 7.16 ERA. So I know Sundays he usually starts, but now he looks like he might be back in the bullpen role.
He's a guy that obviously came in with a ton of expectations. And, last year, in his freshman year, I think they had more expectations for what he did. Certainly coming into this year with a year under his belt, I think there was really high expectations that it would kind of click for him this year. And yeah, it really hasn't. And that's, again, when the guys you do have healthy out of that weekend rotation need to be good. And he's one of those guys who certainly at the high school level was a dominant pitcher and, a very highly rated guy coming in there that so far it hasn't happened. And, maybe it clicks and he figures it out. Again, Arkansas is not a great place to go do that, so it becomes difficult. But it'll be interesting. But they certainly need more out of him. That's for sure.
Eli, when you look at from a Memphis perspective, and you look at this win, how big of a win is this for Matt Reiser and this program in the first year under him?
I think anytime Memphis can beat an SEC school, whether it be Ole Miss or Mississippi State or whoever, I think it's good, especially for a coach who's in his first year and trying to build a program. And it shows a level of where you are. In this world of transfer portal and everything else, they're out there. There might be kids on that Ole Miss team that are looking for a new home at the end of the year, and maybe from this area. And this shows that Memphis is a competitive team at that level. And so I think for confidence within your current team to kind of know things are working and you're headed in the right direction, but also just to show that you're competitive at that level. I think it's always a good thing for a program like Memphis to beat those. When you look around Memphis, in the SEC, in baseball, that is when you're talking about Mississippi State a few years ago, national championship. Ole Miss 2 years ago, national champion. Arkansas currently ranked number one and a team that's always in the College World Series. You go to the other side of the state in Tennessee and what they've been in their baseball program here recently. When you're talking about Memphis baseball and the teams that can come in here and recruit, you got Vanderbilt right down the road as well. It's hard to try and recruit this area, even though it produces a lot of talent. what you could hope for Memphis's sake is if those kids do go to those schools and it doesn't work out, maybe they then decide to come back to this area and they want to kind of drop down a level, and University of Memphis could start picking up those types of kids.
What do you think about? For Bianco's future, do you think he could be on, like, I'm not saying coaches deserve to be fired after back-to-back losing seasons and whatnot, or even bad seasons, but do you think Bianco could very well be on a hot seat if they go like one and done in the SEC tournament?
It's an interesting case because the year they won the national championship, if they would have gone out of the tournament early that year, he probably gets fired. And then he goes on and he said he wins the national championship. Obviously, that earns you some time. How long that earns you, I don't know. I mean, he's had an unbelievable career there. The whole knock on him forever was that he didn't get him to Omaha. Then he gets him there and he wins a national championship. So, last year certainly was a year that was nowhere near the standards that they have. If they go through another year where they don't make the NCAA tournament at all, I don't know that he gets. I don't think that he would be fired now, but I think it does put some pressure on next season, and they'll be looking and saying, "Hey, this is we got to get this turned around." Because there's a lot of support. They're doing more renovations on that baseball stadium down there, spending a lot more money on that stadium. Season tickets continue to be high, but if those start to drop off even a little bit more, then there's no doubt that there's a lot of pressure on him to turn it around and get them back into the NCAA tournament and start getting back on the track to Omaha again.
Speaking of pressure, we've talked about it a few times, and that's what's next for the Rebels. It's coming to Fayetteville. Eli, when you look at this team and this season as it's gone thus far and as it's matured, how much pressure is on Ole Miss to perform well in Fayetteville and possibly come away stealing a series?
Again, with the fact that you just got swept at home by Kentucky and weren't even really competitive, and then you go and lose to a Memphis program. Yeah, I mean, it's the last thing they want to do is go into Arkansas and get swept as well, and all of a sudden this losing streak continues to mount. That would, if you got swept, that would put you at 3-9 in SEC play. It starts getting difficult. We know every single week is a gauntlet in the SEC. You get down, if suddenly you're 3-9, or even if you take only one of the three, now you're 4-8, say. It starts getting difficult to start figuring out how you're going to kind of dig yourself out of that hole, because you don't want to go into the SEC tournament as a really low seed where it becomes virtually impossible to advance and do things there. So, yeah, I mean, it would do well to come up with a series win if they could, but certainly, maybe win Friday game, take a little pressure off, because if you lose Friday, now the losing streak continues, then you go into Saturday, and every game you lose, that pressure builds a little bit more going into the next one to try and end that losing streak and make sure you at least get out of there with a win.
Good point on that, Eli, because looking at their future scheduling down the road, they got, State next week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, coming to Oxford. To me, you got to win 2 out of 3 and take care of business against your rival in Mississippi State. Just the way that Mississippi State has been going up and down all year as well. And I think you still got to play at Auburn, and you still got to play at Georgia down the road as well. And I think you got to take care of advantage on the road, 2 out of 3, on the road in these hostile environments. I know your pitching, like you said, has not been up to par, but you still definitely got to take 2 out of 3 on the road trips in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, again, you talk about Mississippi State. Obviously, anything could happen in that series where those two get together. Mississippi State, certainly, they've had their struggles since they won their national championship as well. But you never know when those two get together. But yeah, I mean, any of these road trips. Again, it's the SEC in baseball it's just crazy. I mean, when you're basically every week you're going against a ranked team of some kind. Most of the times, it seems like you're going against a top 10 ranked team. There's no. When you start digging those holes and you start getting on losing streaks, you look at it, you're getting hard to figure out when they're going to end. And certainly, again, Arkansas, that's not a great place to be headed when you're on a losing streak.
Eli, I would assume that Dave Van Horn will throw Hagen Smith Friday. It's been kind of the mantra thus far. What's your thoughts on Hagen so far? And I mean, obviously he's a challenge to any lineup that he faces, but I mean, is there a way to get to Hagen Smith?
If I had that answer, I bet there'd be some coaches around the SEC calling me to ask me for that. I mean, he's been dominant. I mean, that again, obviously, when you're ranked number one in the country, I mean, it's a dominant team, and every year we know what Dave Van Horn has at Arkansas. So it's good, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, for an offense that has struggled, especially against that top line pitching. And they've seen some of those. You know, they saw the kid from Iowa earlier this year, who's going to be a top 5 draft pick, and they struggled against him. I mean, that top line pitching has certainly given this offense trouble. But yeah, from what he's done so far, I'm not sure there is an answer of how you get to him.
Do you know any idea like how his recruiting is going for next year at all, or any guys that he might be on the lookout for?
You know, it's funny because obviously, again, recruiting has changed so much that with the transfer portal, I don't know where exactly they stand as far as how they want to approach it. I'm sure they're still going to look at adding some high school kids as well, but I'm sure also that they'll be active in the portal on this. Again, you've a couple of transfers they brought in last year. Have years of eligibility remaining. It's not all guys who came in for one final year. So they've got some guys that are going to be back. Obviously, Smithwick again is going to be back as a freshman. So there are some guys there. I would guess in the transfer portal, they may go look for some pitching in the offseason. And I think that's probably the way they would rather do it than try and bring in, freshman arms to try and fix the pitching situation. So, it's hard to say at this point because you just don't know what that combination is going to be of high school kids versus transfer portal additions.
Eli, I know, I feel like you've been at Sports 56 as long as I've been listening to Sports 56, and you may very well have been.
It's been 21 years.
It's been close then. It's been close. What do y'all got coming up this week on some shows, and what are some things y'all are going to be talking about there in the Memphis area this week?
Well, obviously one of the big things here is Memphis basketball, and we're into transfer portal season. They've got basically an entire roster to rebuild because based with what they've had leave so far. There's a good chance there's only going to be 1 or 2 guys back from their roster. So once again, Penny Hardaway's got to try and figure out a way to put a roster together. There is pressure finally, I think, building on him after missing the NCAA tournament this year that he's got to get some things figured out, and next year becomes a big year for him. So it's a tough task to try and put together an entirely new roster year after year after year. But he's going to be tasked with that again. And then obviously, the Grizzlies rounding out their season. It's been a horrendous year because of all the injuries. But then we start looking at the NBA draft. And for the first time in a long time, the Grizzlies are going to be picking in the top 10. So we get to look at draft prospects and what might fit for the Grizzlies. And there's some guys in this Final Four that certainly could be fits. So there will be a lot of interest here in the Final Four because there's some guys in that could be fits for the Grizzlies in the draft.
Well, Eli, you mentioned it. Give us your thoughts real quick on the Final Four, and then also to close. We saw Ryan Silverfield get an extension yesterday. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, coming off a 10-win season, it's hard not to do that. I know there are still some people here in Memphis that have been disappointed, I guess, and that he didn't get them to the conference championship game. But a 10-win season at Memphis doesn't happen very often. It's only happened a couple of times. And so certainly worthy of giving him an extension. Now, this coming season with what is left in the conference with SMU leaving, with Tulane losing their head coach and their quarterback, with UTSA losing their quarterback, I think the belief is that Memphis, with a 4th-year starting quarterback, should go into the season as the favorite in the American Athletic Conference, and certainly at least should be in the conference championship game. So it comes with some pressure for Ryan Silverfield to perform and get them to that level at the top of this conference. And we'll see if that happens. And the great thing is, if you get to the top of the American Athletic Conference and you win a conference championship, that might mean that you're in the college football playoff with the expanded playoff, because the American Athletic Conference figures to be one of the best group of 5 conferences. So it could very well be that your conference champion is the highest ranked and gets into that college football playoff. So there's a lot of hope, but also a lot of expectations for Memphis football in this coming season. And now with that new thing, as far as the Final Four is concerned, it's hard to see anybody beating UConn right now. I mean, when you just win every game by double digits and you're going on 30-0 runs against teams at that level, it's going to take a bad performance probably by them. Although I think if we do get them and Purdue, certainly that I think becomes a great matchup. And you get the 2 7-footers and Klingon and Edey going against each other. I think that could be a lot of fun. I do think Purdue beats NC State. As much as I love DJ Burns, I think it's great. He's a great story, and I think America's fallen in love with him. I think DJ Burns going against Zach Edey, that's going to be a tough task to ask for him, because a lot of the stuff he's done is shoot over opponents. You can't shoot over Zach Edey, and you can't just overpower Zach Edey. So it's going to be, I think, a tough task for NC State against them. And then if it's Purdue against UConn, I think it ends up, it could be a great national championship game. I think Purdue is a team, because of Zach Edey, that could have the opportunity to play UConn close and even beat them.
Eli, my last question for you is your Dallas Cowboys. What are they doing, man? You got rid of Tony Pollard. Now there's a chance, you're still left tackle is going to be gone. Is Dak Prescott still going to be a Cowboy next year? What's going on with the Cowboys?
Boy, I wish I had that answer. I don't know. For Jerry Jones to come out and say they were going to be all in on this next season, and then to do what they've done, which is just lose players and really add nobody. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, quite frankly. I have, you've lost your center and your left tackle. That's not a great remedy on your offensive line. They're going to have to draft offensive line help, but relying on rookies in your offensive line, especially at those 2 positions, possibly, that seems like a big risk to take. I don't know. I think Dak, will they let him walk after this coming season? I don't know. They might. It wouldn't be shocking for that to happen, but I don't know. I really am a little clueless right now as to what the game plan has been so far this offseason.
Me and you both.
Man, Eli Savoy has joined us again today from Sports 56. The original plan was to have Eli on to talk Ole Miss baseball. We've jumped to Final Four. We've jumped to anything and everything, but it shows how multifaceted and multi-talented Eli is. Not us, but Eli. But Eli, man, thank you very much for joining us once again. We appreciate your great insight into all things Ole Miss and sports, for that matter.
Hey, guys, no problem, man. Anytime. Just let me know.
Eli Savoy joined us from Sports 56 there in Memphis. John, that guy is incredible, man. He is really, really good.
It's just amazing how much he actually does behind the scenes, not only for the Memphis area, but for the Oxford, for the Ole Miss. And it's just amazing how much he does on a daily basis, because not only does he get up bright and early every morning to host his own show from 7 a.m. till 10 o'clock with Greg Gaston, he basically actually also makes sure that everything goes well with his other producers as well, like John Harden, Brett Nordersey, and the rest of the gang. And they do a heck of a job, at Sports 56. So give them a lot of credit. If anybody wants to ever go back and listen to their show, they definitely can do so as well on not only on their website, but also on their Twitter pages and everything like that as well.
Yeah, the last time, we've had Eli on 3 times now, because we had him on with Greg Gaston first, and then after that we had just Eli as well. Yeah, Eli's good stuff, man. All those guys over at Sports 56 do a great job. John, real quick, man, before we dive over into Tyler Springs, I do want to go over the Memphis baseball game from last night. If you've got any notes on that, but Tigers got a big win, 9-4 over Ole Miss. Big time win. Also, the fourth largest crowd at FedEx Park.
Mm-hmm.
That's big time, man. I mean, like, it's really good to see Memphis baseball get a crowd out there. My question is, why can't you do that every week instead of only when Ole Miss is in town? But the Tigers, that's the first win in Memphis over Ole Miss since 2007. And the first win over Ole Miss on campus since 2001. So when you look at really the historical value of the 9-4 win over Ole Miss, and like Eli said, Tigers scored 5 runs in the 8th. Big 8th inning for the Tigers. But it has a lot of historical value as one of the better wins in program history at home. And I think when you look around Memphis, I think you see a lot of people that just look at final score. They don't even look at the stats. They don't look at who did what when. They don't go back and dig into the game to get information and context as to why the score happened as it is. Right, John? Mm-hmm. So what is it about? That's a big win last night. Matt Reiser would say, I thought it was a great win to start the week. Quote, that was probably the most complete offensive game of the season for us, and I was really proud of our pitching. We had a good atmosphere in the ballpark, and I think that electricity played into our dugout. I want to say that last statement one more time. We had a good atmosphere in the ballpark, and I think that electricity played into our dugout. Last night proved that if you just bring an Ole Miss to town, people show up. It's very similar to football in a sense that if North Texas is in town, there's going to be 22,000 out there. But by golly, Mississippi State shows up and let's throw 40 in that sucker. I mean, John, that's a big win, and Memphis deserved better. They deserve to have fans out there every game. And I mean, I'm not trying to harp on the fans, but that's big time, man. In the bottom of the 7th, 5 runs were scored. An RBI single by Austin Baskin. That young man is just playing lights out this season.
Mm-hmm.
Started the scoring. Second run coming across on a pass ball. Then we had 2-out double by Jonas Sutton to give the Tigers more insurance. And then Shane Cox would get an RBI single to right field for the final 9 runs. And then you would see Curtis, which I thoroughly enjoy this, man. Curtis went from shortstop to the pitcher's mound to get the close. I love it. He comes. I'm sorry. He came in as a middleman or a setup man for Braden Sanders, who came in and got the close. But I loved looking up and here comes a shortstop. I mean, that's just, to me, that is throwback youth league, Ellendale baseball league baseball for me. Like, oh, hey, Johnny, come here. Let's get on the mound, Johnny. You go over there and play short. Johnny, come here, get on the mound. I mean, that, to me, that's what that was watching last night. And Greg Gaston, speaking of Greg Gaston, he was on the call last night, but he made a statement that Matt Reiser is probably one of the more aggressive coaches he's ever been around. I'm not sure if he means personality-wise or what he means there, but I do know that in strategy-wise, Reiser is very, very aggressive. And I like it. I like it in a sense of You're going to win some games, but you're going to lose some games. But I feel like I'm going to win more than I'm going to lose being aggressive. What's your thoughts on Matt Riser so far, John?
My goal this year, what are they at right now? 14-17? Yeah, they're 14-17 right now. My goal this year was probably to say, hey, as long as you can get in that 20 win bracket, I think it's a success. Not only because you're doing a great job in the transfer portal this year, but you also kept some decent pitchers from last year's staff, and you also get some decent bats as a last year's staff. I mean, yeah, you're gonna have your ups and downs, like everybody. Like we talked about like weeks ago, Wes. Midweek series, anybody is beating anybody on a given day lately. Because look at Southern, they beat LSU in Baton Rouge the other day. But that's my goal this year was to have 20-25 wins. To be honest with you, for this Tiger baseball team, not only because you're doing a great job recruiting, but you're doing a great job by shuffling your lineup up and down as well. Yeah, you might want to see a few bench players come in and whatnot, but I think he's doing a great job. But look at real quick, look at that Ole Miss game stat yesterday, where you did a sack bunt, I believe, with 2 outs to score 2 runs, with Marcy grounding out to a sack bunt with got 2 RBIs on that. But yeah, you made it. Andrew Baskins singled to RBI. Jake Curtis even hit a home run yesterday for the Tigers as well. But I think overall it's a successful year so far. Yeah, you might have lost to the not so good teams, but everybody's beating up everybody on these days on the midweek series. And I think going into Florida Atlantic, we talked about, yeah, you lost 2 out of 3 to Florida Atlantic last weekend. But Florida Atlantic is one of the top teams in college baseball year in, year out because they're always playing for regional. So that was always a tough, opening weekend in conference play for the Tigers. But hopefully they can make some noise this weekend when they play Rice. And to be honest with you, hopefully this ain't the same Rice team as years past. So hopefully they can maybe sweep the Rice Owls or maybe even take 2 out of 3 in Houston, Texas this weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, coming into last night, Memphis had scored 215 runs through 30 games. That's an average of 7.2 runs a game. They hit 44 home runs, which ranks 34th coming into last night, ranked 34th in the nation. 61 doubles, which sits them at 36th in the nation and second in the American Athletic Conference. 274 hits is most in the league and 57th in the country. 52 stolen bases, ranks second in the league and 33rd nationally. 158 walks, ranks them 31st in the NCAA and leads the conference. And defensively, Memphis has turned the 30th most double plays in the country with 24. That's on a national level. This team is producing. I think the Matt Riser hire, and don't get me wrong, I like Carrick Jackson, but I think the Matt Riser hire was perfect for this baseball team because you bring a guy in who had stability at the program prior, had built a reputation of not only winning on a successful level and winning on a consistent level, but more importantly, you bring a I'm not saying Jackson was not a family man. Just hear me out. You bring a family man that is not scared to walk into a house and recruit their son as a son of his own. And I say that for this. I have never, and I will tell Matt Riser this. If he wants to listen to this show, thank you for listening, Coach. I'm giving him props. I've never in my life seen a coach not be scared or concerned or anything about an image and share his religion more freely than I have Matt Riser. He is very open with it. He spoke to us openly in the interview that we had with him about it at the very beginning. It is a part of his life. He does not shy away from it, and he will gladly let you know that is a part of his life. But more importantly than that, John, he encourages his players to be the same way. He's teaching through his religion. It's something that I have, and I mean, maybe I could be completely lost, and there could be 90 million coaches out there that do the same thing. But the only one that I've seen at this level is Matt Riser so far. He's very open about it, man. And I think that right there sells mamas and sells daddies to go, yeah, go play for him. And as a matter of fact, through conversations that I've had with players or with parents of players, I know that statement to be a fact. And John, I'm pretty sure you do too. So Matt Riser has been amazing for this Memphis baseball team. Those stats right there prove it. Braden Sanders last night got his 7th save of the year. Coming into the game, he had 6, which was 4th most in the country. This team is talented. And like Eli just said, a lot of this was built through the portal or re-recruiting the.
Yeah, you also made a good point because Sanders is actually a former Ole Miss Rebel. What kind of coincidence to get, finish the game against your former team yesterday in Ole Miss, and just the way that he produced in that bullpen role. You said 6 saves, and now he's got 7 on this season, but incredible. I mean, Matt Riser, like you brought up, his post-game conferences, he ain't scared to say how it is. Even when the team is struggling, hitting the ball, he's basically saying the right things, and whatnot as well. And I think also another key addition we have brought up numerous times as well, he's a family guy. You don't see his alumni or former player come with him on staff as well, from a recruiting perspective as well. Like in Trey Harrington, he's a digital guy and recruiting guy, but you also see how important not only Trey is to Riser, but Riser is also important to Trey because that's how they built that connection at Southeast Louisiana before he came here. And going forward, I think it's going to be phenomenal because, like you said, recruiting is off to a great start, which, we got a lot of local players coming right now and hopefully more to come as well.
And I think there will be. I honestly do. We've talked on and off air about this staff that Riser's built. And based on conversations with him, based on conversations with other people, I feel like that was very important. And that was a focal point in building that staff of, I want at least 1 or 2 guys who know this area and understand how to get the talent to stay here. Eli just talked about it. Getting guys to stay at home because you've got a lot of baseball schools around Memphis that could easily go pick up a Carter McKay, could easily go pick up an Eli DeBerry, could easily go pick up a Jake Pitts, numerous other players, guys that are on the roster right now, Duante Stewart, Jake Compton, plenty of others. This is why I say and why I stand by my statement I just said that the Matt Riser hire was perfect for this program because they found a guy that knows how to do it and knows how to come in with a plan and implement that plan and quickly get immediate results on a positive from that plan. And you're already seeing it. I mean, he came in and re-recruited 3/4 of that roster, John. You know that. We've had conversations about that. I talk about how special Austin Baskin is. Austin Baskin was almost not a Memphis Tiger. Let's just call a fact what a fact is. it took Matt Reiser re-recruiting him to the roster. Not only him, but his family to the roster to get him to be here. He was on a 36-game on-base streak until it broke. I think maybe 40. It was up there. It was in the high 30s, low 40s. That was almost not a thing because Baskin was, when Jackson left, a number of players hit. Number of players. And that's what a lot of Memphis fans don't understand. That look at the roster. Look how many guys came back. Look how many guys were on the roster last year. You're right. They were on the roster last year. That doesn't mean that they were going to remain on the roster from last year. And John, would you agree with this statement? That is all because you have a coach with a plan that knows how to implement it and that knows how to get people to buy in to what he's trying to do.
Yeah, by far, absolutely. I think you made it, you had, like you said, the largest crowd yesterday. I don't know what the ratio was for Memphis to Ole Miss fans because it's kind of hard on the ESPN Plus broadcast, but you got to bring more fans to the ball games, like you just mentioned. I know the weather hasn't been nice lately or in weeks past, but it's gonna be fall. It's gonna be spring warming up soon before we know it. And I think it all starts now, where you fans definitely got to show this team a lot of credit because, heck, $7 for a baseball game and free parking, you can't really beat that at all. Because in years past, I like the idea of playing Ole Miss now at home on your home turf, on doing a home and home with them. Because in years past, when you have gone to AutoZone Park, you have definitely seen more Ole Miss, Arkansas, Mississippi State fans show up for those games because nobody in the Memphis fan base really wants to drive downtown, which I'm not giving them bad grief about it, but years ago when we didn't have to pay $25 to $30 to park downtown, when it was like $10 to $15, you had a reason to show up for that. But now you can enjoy the ballpark, and they're doing a lot of game day festivities as well. That's what I love about this Reiser program because I think in years past, we really didn't do that many game day promotions as well. And now we are.
Yeah, he's got like some kind of family cookout competition every weekend out in left field now. There was 1,400 in 1,426 people at the game last night. John, speaking of programs that are on the rise,
mm-hmm.
The Memphis women's basketball program, I feel, is on the rise. Head coach Alex Simmons last year was under her first year. We saw a lot of fight. We saw a lot of grit, especially in the conference tournament. Memphis really fought hard. When you look at the way they finished the season, they really fought hard. But we're going to bring Tyler Springs in. Tyler is the voice of the Lady Tigers, as well as other numerous things around the city. He's ESPN Plus sideline reporter now. I mean, we're getting the cream of the crop today on this show in Memphis. We had Eli Savoy on a minute ago. Now we got Tyler on. So Tyler, first off, welcome to the show. When you look at the Memphis Tigers women basketball team, of course, Katrina Merriweather was an incredible coach. She leaves, goes back home to Cincinnati. In comes brand new coach, brand new style, brand new approach to basketball with Coach Simmons. What's your thoughts on her first season as the helm of the Lady Tigers?
Steve's on mute.
Yeah, I think you're on mute, Tyler.
How's that? Is that better?
Yes, sir.
Boy, I should act like I've done this before. Thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate the chance to talk about something that I really enjoy getting to cover, and something that's obviously risen in terms of just the level of quality over the last couple of years. I just finished my 5th season doing this, and I'm on my 3rd coaching staff. So it's a lot of turnover, right? And Matty Griggs would tell you the same thing. But I think it's been generally for the better. I think this first season for Alex, on paper, when going into the season, if you looked at the talent on the roster, based on what she brought from Gardner-Webb and what you had coming back with Memphis, I think it looked like it was shaping up to be a really good year. I think there were times when you felt like it should be better than it is. Ultimately, I think, maybe they fell a little bit short of where they wanted to be this year. Underwhelming, I think maybe is a little bit strong. But I think that, based on the number of, I think 4 1,000 point scorers on the court, that you could have distributed to, whether it's Griggs or Alaysia Smith or Kai Carter or Kiari Kane, you felt like they had the options to score a lot. And I think what turned out to be the case was a couple of things. One was the talent certainly in the American is a little bit different than what it was in the Big South. And Alex, I think, had one of, if not the most talented roster in the Big South. And I'm not sure that was the case in the American this year, based on, both physical gifts, but also just skills and where those kids are mentally. But that's because it was a really good league. It was a tough year. So unfortunately, I think it took a while. The other part of it is, we're in this transfer portal era. It takes a while for kids to gel. That's just the fact of it, is that you get into the season, even into conference play, they really didn't come together until late-ish January, where they felt like they actually developed a style, trusted each other, started winning. You don't see a lot of teams that finish below 500 go for a 5-game win streak in February, right? And they did that. They finished pretty strong overall. I think, if you look at the sort of the beginning of the year projections, they fell a little bit short of the mark there. I think it was a little harder than people wanted it to be. But I think a lot of promise for certainly what's ahead.
Tyler, you made a great point regarding earlier on in the season, just because me and Wes have discussed this numerous times, and I think this year the non-conference schedule definitely was a key. Now, I know 13-17, nobody wants a losing record, but that non-conference schedule made your guys or girls a little bit better also throughout the year as well, because looking at those early tournaments where you played Middle Tennessee twice, you played Ole Miss, you played Marquette, Southern Miss even came here. Good to see Jolie back on the sideline, by the way, regarding that. Non-conference scheduling this year was pretty challenging, but also a good test for the Lady Tigers.
Without a doubt. I mean, 18th in the country, I believe, is what they finished in terms of non-conference schedule, which is brutal. And I thought last year's schedule was great, and this year's schedule was even more difficult. And I think, personally, I love playing the best of the best. I'm all here for it, to go on the road and play at Marquette. Go on the road and play at Tennessee. I'm absolutely for seeing the toughest teams. Alex doesn't really shy away from that. That's what, she expects her teams to compete at a high level. And I think one of the things that I didn't mention before is that, going into a lot of these tests is you felt like you were, you had two sort of interesting things happen with the roster. One was, you said the preseason injury to Tanya Welch, which dynamically changed your backcourt, because you felt like Tan had a good summer, was poised to be an important piece. So you lose her in the backcourt, and now a lot more pressure is on Madison Griggs and Kiari Kane. And they really didn't get their post depth solidified, even to the point that they had it up until you get Tika Salmon in there in September, which is a really late addition. And I think it was hard for her to adjust sometimes as a freshman, though she played well in spots. But what you're talking about, seeing those teams early, especially for a first-year head coach with a team, where your whole roster is not one that's used to that coach, they have to get used to expectations, and they have to get used to style play. And you can do all you want in the summer, when you're wearing 2 different colors, blue and gray. But, when you actually get out there and you have to face live action and opponents that don't want good things for you, it looks a little different. So I think part of their early season struggles were, they played a gauntlet of a schedule, seeing Middle Tennessee twice. And I think the foul trouble that was, very apparent in those games certainly hurt them, and it cost them a lot this year. in terms of, not being able to get to the free throw line and the other team getting there often. But I think I would never, I would just not knock at all the effort that Alex made to schedule a non-conference, because if she ever gets in a position where it's going to be kind of hit or miss, where she's on the bubble, let's just say, okay, if you're looking out toward the future, non-conference schedule matters. The committee has said the non-conference schedule matters. So that number's got to stay high, especially for Memphis being in a conference like the American, which is right now it's a mid-tier league. It's not a tier 1 league. It's not a power league, especially with, as they keep like losing teams to other conferences. Right now, Memphis, you can win your conference, and that's probably how you got to get in, because this year, even in years before this one, the American has been at most a 2-bid league, and it's on everybody in the league to get better as a whole. But the non-conference schedule was terrific. I thought they got some good wins out of that. But as Alex said the other day when I was filming something with her, if you flip a couple of those close losses to wins, then we're talking about something. But until they become wins, like they rest as an L, and that just means you need more.
Tyler, speaking of a game that was an L that really felt like it could be a win, and I think it's probably the highlight of the year. You probably know exactly where I'm going with this, and that was the battle between Memphis and Tennessee earlier this year. You saw something in Coach Simmons on the sideline during that game. There was a sense of pride about her program and how they were fighting and how they were competing. And as you watched throughout the remainder of the year, you talked about the winning streak, and we had a chance to talk with Coach Simmons and Maddie Griggs following the last game of the season, and you could still see that same sense of pride. What is it about her style that you think is going to benefit this program the most?
Well, I think first off, speaking to the Tennessee game, everybody was thrilled by what they did in that environment, which, by the way, that's my first time going to Thompson Bowling Arena. I'm not going to necessarily call it whatever the sponsor name. What, it's the Food City Center, I think. Okay, we'll be specific with that. But it's Thompson. It's what you grew up with, is Thompson Bowling Arena, and it's awesome. Like that is one of the top probably 5 atmospheres that I've been in. Like just like the building looks so cool. The crowd was there in full throat, I think, especially once they realized, this is not going to be a walkover game, And I think it meant something to Alex, obviously, to walk in there with a team that embodies her style and represents Memphis and her style of coaching well, right? So I think that spoke well for them to be in that game the way they were. And yeah, you're right. Like they're a shot away, essentially, in that game. I think the best thing about what Alex brings to the table and in terms of the style that she's trying to coach is she's leaning into a lot of natural gifts for these kids, right? I think she gives them the freedom to go and pursue offense in a way that sometimes, the coaches have varying styles. Hers is one where I think she allows creativity on the offensive end. And, I think that works really well when you've got a lot of weapons to go to and they have, the ability to score, right, at different levels. I think Tanya Welch, if she's healthy, I honestly think the Tigers win that game against Tennessee. Now, look, you could say if Rickea Jackson is healthy for Tennessee, that changes it too. But what Alex is leaning into is kids' natural gifts. One of those being kids who are good at shooting and like to shoot the ball, kids who want to play fast, they want to play with confidence. She's looking for a high volume game, and I think she knows the recruiting scene in terms of what she's looking for with high level athletes, and she can oftentimes turn those players into something that's more than what others projected, right? I mean, you talk about Alasia Smith, who had one Division I offer, and it was to Gardner Webb, even though she played really, really well in high school basketball, a little bit undersized, but both her parents played college basketball. Alex saw something in her and said, I want this kid on my team. She's been a defensive anchor for 4 years now across 2 different schools, right? Jessica Williams, who was the star at Gardner Webb before, had maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 Division I offers, and Alex was one of them. So I think Alex can certainly spot talent and turn it into something that is functional in her system by freeing it up and giving them confidence to do what they love to do what they love best on the offensive end, which is score the basketball, shoot the basketball well at will. So you're going to get more and more quality talent in here for Memphis on the recruiting trail. I think that's certainly what we expect. I'm not saying it's coming tomorrow. I'm not saying it's coming even in this fall, but I think, when you get a couple of additional classes in here for her, and maybe a key addition in the portal here or there. That's going to be a really, really competitive side just based on like the group of talent in the program.
Tyler, can you talk about the American Conference as a whole? Like, you put it up there kind of like the Big East, kind of in a way, because I'm looking at it. I know SMU is going to the ACC next year, but they've always had, good teams. Like this year, I think South Florida, North Texas, and just to name a few of them, I think, this conference as a whole going forward without SMU can basically be maybe more than a 2-bid lead, maybe, because you got decent teams in this conference.
I like the potential of this league, and I'll say that while acknowledging also that this was a down year for the American, okay? Like, people love to talk about parity and the fact that, hey, anybody could beat anybody on any given night. To an extent, that's good, I think. But also what you're really looking for when you say parity is you want concentrated excellence, right? You want like the top 6 teams in your league to be good and for them to be able to beat, the bottom half, the bottom third of your league. This year, when it really was in the American, anybody can beat anybody, that's not necessarily good for your league. I thought this was a weak American this particular year. And you saw it because only one American team got a bid to the NCAA tournament. It's not like other years where South Florida did enough in the non-conference play that they would go no matter what they did in conference, but that they were typically good in conference as well. I think going forward, you're going to have to see the level of excellence rise from the top teams in the American. And I think there are a lot of coaches that have the chance to do that. I think you're going to see it as coaches learn that the American nationally, I think, is not respected the way the Big East is. I mean, listen, it's not the same conference it was when UConn was here, right? Now that has freed things up in a certain way because you're getting more spotlight on teams like South Florida, teams like East Carolina. But I do think that there's going to be a concerted effort by all the coaches in this league to challenge themselves outside of conference, because if you don't, it's going to remain a 1-bid league. And I think for them to have the conference profile to draw the type of recruits that they want, they've got to prove that this league can do well against non-conference competition. That means going head-to-head sometimes against teams in the Big East, in the ACC, in what the new formed Big 12 is going to look like, even teams in the WCC, when you get Oregon State, Washington State, Gonzaga is really good. Portland had a good team this year. So I think there's going to be a variety of ways for the American to raise its profile. It's not there yet. It wasn't there this year in particular. But I like what you're saying in terms of the potential of the conference. I think there are a lot of good coaches in this league that can elevate it. This year probably was not the year where I would pick it out and say, yeah, this was as good as the Big East. It was not top to bottom as good as a conference like that.
Yeah, good point on East Carolina, especially when they made that tournament run.
Yeah, they're coming, right? I mean, and once again, you saw them here in this tournament this year. Back to the championship game for the second time in 2 seasons because of that style that Kid McNeil leans into, right? So, like, there are certainly teams in this conference that are problems for good teams in other conferences, but I think you've got to see a more consistent demonstration of that across the board, and we'll see what the Tulsas, what the North Texases look like for seasons to come. But I think the potential is there.
Well, Tyler, we've seen this in women's basketball the last few years, and that is the potential for growth, and honestly, the potential for the explosion of the popularity of the sport. I don't think you can get any more explosion than what we saw between LSU and Iowa. Caitlin Clark is just a sniper. I mean, she's hitting it from parking lots, 3 downs, 3 blocks away from the basketball goal. So let's talk a little women's Final Four. I'm sure you're probably locked into it, I would imagine. What's your thoughts on the Final Four? But first, what's your thoughts on the game? Is what I feel like everybody's calling it. It wasn't even the national championship game, but the LSU Iowa game. And what's your thoughts on that game and what it's really doing for the sport as a whole?
I thought it was cool. I'm appreciative that they get that kind of stage, and I recognize, the consistency across the board is not quite there. Women's basketball right now is still, I guess you could say, I think, a lot like college football in that, like, the schools that are talked about are the top 25, right? Like it's a very cream of the crop kind of sport where, the upsets are few and far between. It took a lot for Middle Tennessee to get by Louisville to pull that upset in the tournament, right? I mean, that deserves respect. And we saw that Middle Tennessee team, up close twice. But for the Final Four, I think I had 3 of the 4 teams here. I think I had South Carolina, UConn, and I did have Iowa, and I think I can't remember. I think I took either Texas or Stanford out of the 4th bracket, but it certainly wasn't NC State. And shout out to the Wolfpack for getting both the men and the women in at the same time, just like UConn. I loved the game on the other night. I did think that there were times when I felt as though LSU was not doing as good of a job defending Caitlin Clark as they had the previous season. Like Haley Van Lit's a great player, but it's clear that like she by herself was not capable of defending Caitlin Clark, which is no shade to her because Clark's so hard to defend and has such range. I mean, even when you felt like she was playing her close, she'd just step back or do that shuffle to her left and hit a fadeaway 3 from what felt like 47 feet. But it was great to see on that stage. LSU certainly kept it competitive for a while, and I felt like that was a great showcase for women's basketball. Regardless of who you wanted to win, who you picked. But I thought it was awesome to see that on that stage. And I actually, I went to bed for the second half and probably shouldn't have, but I did stay up for the first half of the UConn and USC game that followed it. And I thought, I was just laughing every time you see Paige Beckers go down and trade baskets with Juju Watkins, because I think those two, especially just being able to find their own shot, I think that's what maybe people have been less accustomed to seeing in the women's game. It's been a more fundamental, more ball movement oriented game to get easy looks. But so many of these kids now, you go from the kids we've talked about to Mylasia Full-Wiley for South Carolina, to lots of others who can all go and get their own shot. I think that is part of what has elevated the profile for women's basketball. And you're seeing that, I think, in the way that especially, kids like Beckers have carried UConn, a very banged up UConn team, to the Final Four. Caitlin Clark, I think, has done it. You can make the argument Caitlin Clark's team was better last year, right? But here they are back in the Final Four once again, and it's been mainly on her shoulders. But the other 4, quote unquote, they've got to show up too. And I think that's a credit to them that they have. Camila Cardoso, that I got to see up close and personal last year, has been great and is much improved. I thought she was still pretty raw even last year, but she deserves, I think, the attention that she's getting. I'm going to really enjoy watching both the matchups, but I feel like there's people are basically sort of putting South Carolina in the final, right? So, but what I'm really interested in seeing is having seen clips, and not full games, but I've seen sort of stretches of the NC State team in the tournament. I really like that matchup for them, just because they've already done things that people didn't expect of them. So I'd be really interested to see how the Wolfpack can match up, because they've got some players who can really run the floor in transition and shoot the ball. Can Zaza single-handedly take down South Carolina? I doubt it, but we'll see. So I'm interested to see how both of those contests look, and hopefully, guys, the 3-point lines are drawn correctly, because that's the sort of thing you just keep shaking your head and you're like, how, man? Like this, it's just one thing after another. And I'm not saying anybody is intentionally trying to disrespect the women's game, but there are things that you see in the women's game from time to time where you're like, man, would they really allow that in a men's game, right? Like the guy who ran on the floor in the SEC championship game during that near the end of the game scrum, guy just hopped over the scorer's table, with no regard for security whatsoever. Yep. You never see that in a men's game. Never. So there is still respect to be gained in the women's game, but they are, they're getting there. They're close.
Yeah, I think. Oh, good. I was going to say also, I think North Carolina State has done a great job recruiting as well, on the women's basketball point of view as well. But Tyler, what can we do to get attendance a little bit better in women's basketball in general?
Well, it's a good question.
Because I love what Coach Yo said throughout the year regarding their attendance, and they finally had showed up a little bit more toward the end of the year to support the Lady Rebels. When, to me, I think Coach Yo is one of the greatest coaches, in women's basketball alone. But what can we do to get the attendance a little bit better in women's basketball?
What I like about Memphis, and I recognize certainly, I think they're the only team in their conference that is built in this way, is if you had the Memphis women playing in FedEx Forum, that would be a disadvantage to them, right? It would be a disservice to them. Although I would understand if you went back to doing that. Typically, they're not going to draw enough fans to justify being in a building that size, right? And a lot of teams in the conference, every other team besides Memphis in the conference shares their gym with the men's team for that school, right?
Okay.
And usually those gyms are built to hold, a crowd of 8,000, 10,000, maybe a little upwards of that, which is fine. You totally get that from a facility standpoint. I love like the sort of the trend that I've seen people, by people I mean schools and programs, going with building smaller arenas that they can fill more easily and make louder, right? Like Baylor's new arena, on the smaller side, right? Like they're making sure that this is not necessarily about revenue. This is about fan experience and making it smaller and putting people closer to the action and putting a little bit more of a personal touch on there. I think Memphis has done a good job of getting their athletes out in front of like youth groups after games, and definitely doing community service in the off season. But I'm certainly here for like all the game operation stuff you can do and making the ticket affordable. I don't fault South Carolina for raising their prices in particular, but I think making it a closer knit, but I think more energetic game day atmosphere is important. Like the personal touch. I think for like women as athletes to spend time with young girls, right? Like sort of to give them a role model type of figure after the game is really, really, really cool. Not to say that the men's programs don't do that well, but men's programs have the built-in support, I think, over time, and decades of investments from boosters that the women don't yet. But I think, the more you get women's basketball players and coaches out in front of media talking about their game with just passion and like specific strategy and just being able to tell their depth of knowledge and care for the game, that's important. So it's not just one thing. It's going to be a lot of different things. But I do think, and I tell people this all the time, because of the ticket prices for Memphis, which are only like $10 a game, women's basketball, I worked in minor league baseball for 3 years, and women's basketball very much like that. It's a family outing, like it will be, it's going to be intense. And you obviously want your team to win. But I also think in general, like that's a good place to bring kids who are, anywhere between like 3 and 12, and they can be interested in like the game itself, or they can just be interested in the atmosphere and chill out with a bag of nerds or whatever it is. But I think it's really like it's a fun family atmosphere. It's affordable right now, and I think just the more personable, the more personable elements obviously get built up there. That works in their favor. If you've watched the coverage, I think the passion you're seeing from Elle Duncan and Chinea Gwumake and Andrea Carter on the desk for ESPN studio coverage has been awesome. And I wish we could replicate that on every time we talk about women's basketball, because they've been, I think, driving the energy for the sort of the women's train in this tournament. And I just love seeing that. And I hope that extends to more schools, making the athletes, available and personable, right? And being able to say how much they love the game and to show that off to lots of different groups.
Well, at the onset, Tyler, I mentioned that you've got your hands in a lot of different things. One of those is the Memphis Showboats. So the Showboats are going to be tooting their horn at home this week for their home opener. So, yes, there you go, toot. So, they got a big win over Houston last week. And then now you've got first ever meeting between Coach Flip and Coach Wade Phillips this week. We've got an article out now on 4star.live about it. But the UFL is going on. It's a very exciting league. I talked on Monday about how much I enjoy hearing everything going on. A player got spit on the other day, immediately was ejected, no delay. I knew exactly what was happening basically when the spit hit the guy. Like, it was really just, I feel more immersed into the game as a experience style side of it. So let's talk a little boats before we get you out of here, man. I'm sure that's something else that you're really excited about. What's your thoughts on the home opener for this year, and what's your thoughts on this team so far through one game?
Well, thank you for asking about that. I'm really fortunate to be able to work with this team and this broadcast group, and I'm excited that we get to do this again for our second year in a row. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope more and more people around Memphis get a look at it and find out just how fun it is, because it's been a lot of fun to cover and some really quality football too. Last year a little up and down with an 0-3 start, but then they rolled off a 5-game win streak, and I think gave people a lot to cheer for going down late in the season. You knew they were going to be better this year with the dispersal draft, right? Like the concentration of talent, without question, was going to be better. And as soon as they drafted Case Cookus, I said, "Yep, things are looking up." Because Case Cookus knows how to do one thing extremely well among his lots of things, and that is take an absolute beating and keep going. I mean, the man honestly should be in the ring. He has an incredible chin to just stand in there and deliver the ball where it needs to go. And I think you saw him do that a ton in the first half on Sunday against Houston. Second half, penalties and some adjustments by Houston, I think, caught up to the Showboats a little bit, but they at least had the lead at that point, to the point where they could play a little more conservatively. And you didn't get the run game going the way you expected. I would say, in general, the run game has been down across the league, and I'm not sure if that's a defense ahead of the offense type of thing early in the year, or if that's just speaking to the talent along all the defensive fronts throughout the UFL this year, which has definitely risen with the concentration of the two leagues now into 8 teams. The defensive fronts are stout. You're never going to see a one in any particular game this season that you say that's not a fearsome defensive front. But I love what they did, offensively. I think especially early in the game, connecting on passes in tight windows. Jonathan Adams, certainly an improvement in the wide receiver core from last year. Vinny Papale continues to do what he does, which is be clutch on third down. You got a little bit of Sage Surratt in there as well. I'm interested to see, what other ways they find for David Davis to get the football. I think he's been terrific in terms of the touches he got in that game. And defensively, you're just looking for upward progression from Kyrie Woods and company over there, because Carnell Lake bringing back as many guys as he did from last year means this is going to be a defense, I think, that already has a significant level of chemistry. You saw that in week 1 where they were put pressure on Garantano and hold that Houston run game down. So I love the odds, honestly, coming into Saturday against San Antonio. I think this is a good team. I recognize it's hard to tell, and just like the NFL, if the Chiefs lose week 1, nobody's going to be, well, we're out in the Chiefs, right? So we have to give a little bit of that license to these teams. But I'm psyched for Saturday. We are going to do something new this year on News Talk 98.9. When you watch the broadcast, Wes, I think you've probably seen, like you said, like the very, I don't want to say intimate, but like, very up close and personal stuff, right? So we're going to get, if there's a big play on the sideline, we will have access on radio to some of the players involved in that big play. So, if there's a touchdown pass from Cookus to Papale, and Papale is interviewed by TV, we might be able to talk to Case Cookus on radio. So those are the kinds of things that you're going to get if you tune in on News Talk 98.9 for our broadcast. We're psyched about that, and the access and the fact that Coach Flip is, I think, sharp. Like, you can tell he's competitive. You can tell he got angry a couple of times on the sideline on Sunday. But I think he's sharp, and he's about the growth of the game, right? He knows why he's here. Like, he knows that he has to invest in his guys. His guys know that about him. I think he cares that it means something to the city of Memphis, and he cares that he performs well in that role. So I think the Showboats are going to be. It's too early to say good this year. Like we'll find out week 3 against Birmingham, right? But that San Antonio Brahmas team is much better than last year, right? Wade Phillips, there's a reason he keeps doing this, right? He's done it for a long time, and he's done it well. So I think Saturday we'll see who can run the ball better. But I think the most important thing is, who can run the ball, who can get the lead, and those are two incredible defenses, taking on one another in week 2, trying to stay unbeaten.
No doubt. I tell you, I'm gonna have to go old school style, John. I'm gonna have to bust out the old AirPods, and put them in my ear and listen to the radio broadcast as I'm watching on TV, evidently, because that's gonna be cool. John, I just thought about this as Tyler was talking. We've had Eli on 2 or 3 times. Russell Copeland's been on a couple of times. Now Tyler Springs is on. I mean, we've had the entire radio crew for the Showboats on. And so What's your thoughts, Tyler, on Eli and Russell, and how much fun is it to just be able to work with those two guys?
Well, I go back a long way with Eli Savoy. He gave me my first job in radio when I was coming out of college. Didn't know anything. Went into his office just being somebody who was interested in sports media, and he said, "Well, like I've got this part-time role where you can learn the board if that's where you want to start." And I'm so grateful that he gave me the opportunity and the encouragement that day to pursue radio. So I owe a ton to him. And people who've worked with these two guys, I think, know Eli is one of the most easy to get along with people in radio. I would say, he tells you what he wants, and he's there's not like a lot of extra with Eli. He's got a very, very calm demeanor. I think he puts you at ease, and he's very just very clear about, hey, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it. Let's have fun with it. And to have him as the play-by-play voice and to have Russell as the analyst has been awesome. I think Russell is nails as an analyst. I actually, working with him last year, I got to work with. I've gotten to work in the last couple of years with Northwest Mississippi Junior College and doing their football games on streaming. And 2 years ago, I did it with Gabe Kuhn. And then, Gabe, who was great, by the way, and then he picked up his radio gig at 98, or I should say 92.9. So he was kind of out on making that road trip down there on Thursday afternoons, because he's got that 4 to 7. But I tapped Russell. I said, Russell, would you even be interested in doing JUCO football? Russell, he lives just south of the line. He said, absolutely, man. I love football at all levels. So he signed up to be an analyst with me last year, and I can't say enough good things about the preparation that he puts in, the clarity that he delivers his views in the broadcast with. He's very specific about telling you, hey, this may look like one thing, but it's actually this. He points your eyes to the right places, and he does it almost instantaneously. And I think he's a great dude and also an incredibly sharp football mind. So I think to have those two guys kind of anchoring this broadcast and giving you the perspective on this Showboats team, it's something no other market has access to right now, right? To have two veteran radio guys, like a veteran radio guy and a veteran football guy, giving you commentary on the game that you're not going to find specific to any other team, because no other team has a radio broadcast team. I think it's an incredible windfall that Steve Macy and Morgan Bohannon and the other guys between Cumulus and the Showboats and the UFL have been able to put together. So I'm so thrilled to be a part of this team. And I really, it would be hard for me to love my two broadcast partners more than I do. They're just a great group of guys to work with. They want to do this for the right reasons. They want it to be great.
Well, since you
you nailed it with Russell Conklin. You nailed it. Go ahead, John.
Tyler, I was going to say also, since you do Northwest Mississippi football, can you tell any high school football players or any high school basketball players or any high school players in general right now that are going through the recruiting process on what they can be on the lookout for JUCO football? Because, some of them are basically struggling with these offers lately. It might not be a bad fit to go JUCO right now for a year or two as well. What kind of Northwest Mississippi ranks do you think they can tell our listeners for them to be on the lookout for, not only for this year or next year? I know they got into the Memphis area, done pretty well recruiting, not only at Northwest, but also Itawamba and Koahama, and just to name a few of them. But just talk about the JUCO football, since you do a little bit of football for them.
Absolutely. This is a layup for me. I love working with the team down at Northwest. I think that team, that school, that athletic program in particular, I think is really, really sharply run. And that's a credit to a university-wide effort to make sure that athletics is well taken care of down there in Senatobia. I growing up in Maryland, I'd never been really to a junior college campus because there isn't any junior college football in Maryland, right? So you don't really have the opportunity to see that. It's only in a couple of states where Mississippi, Kansas, Iowa, Texas, that really put the football investment into colleges. I guess you would say California too, right, from a state level. But doing junior college football opened my eyes in Mississippi to a whole new level of football, and not just that, but a whole new level of resources that are being poured into the game. I think the staff at Northwest in particular has an incredible level of experience and continuity, and they're there for the right reasons. They want to develop these players. They know, junior college is not the ultimate landing spot for these kids. They want to go there because they want to go to a higher level, and they're of a mind to get them there, right? And they have the experience to get them there and to give them the wisdom they need to compete for Division I schools. And I recognize, especially like in the era of portaling, like there's less and less respect for high school athletes and junior college athletes. But I'm here to tell you, there's quality football being played in the Mississippi junior college ranks every Thursday night. And I think a huge share of that goes to Benji Parker's staff at Northwest. I mean, you walk on campus there in Senatobia, and Senatobia is not a big town at all. It's 40 minutes south of Memphis, but I thought for a minute I walked onto MUS's football field. I mean, it is that nice, right? I mean, they look like they have prep school level facilities, and I didn't know what to expect, but like just being able to have the chance to go there to get an education, which by the way you can go and pursue like welding, right? Like things you wouldn't normally get at like University of Memphis or a traditional 4-year university. And if you have a mind for that, and you also happen to be a football player, you're going to find a really, really good home at a place like Northwest or one of the other Mississippi junior colleges. And I love it down there. I really can't say enough good things about my experience doing games down there and the level of football talent. As it comes to mind now, I want to say, I mean, they've taken obviously a lot of the guys who are just south of the line, the Horn Lakes, the South Haven guys, the DeSoto Central guys, that kind of thing. I think Jalen Powell, who was at St. Benedict a few years ago, was down there 2 years ago. He was at North Alabama this past season after having a really good season for Northwest. There should be other Memphis names that come immediately to mind, but they aren't right now. I think actually, maybe John might know Justin Jefferson, who was maybe a linebacker D-line, right? He went down to Pearl River from out of Bartlett and then over to Alabama. So I think that shows you that there's not a ton of spots for out-of-state guys, but like if you are at all interested in being an out-of-state guy and going and finding a home at a junior college to try and get an opportunity to play high-level football, with the hope of getting a little more attention, I think that's an awesome place to go. And I think junior college in general, especially in the Mississippi ranks, they've got a lot of good programs down there, and it's highly competitive. I mean, you see it every year with Northwest, with East Mississippi, obviously, which is well known from their Netflix days. But there's some great schools in the South this year. Colin was awesome in the South this year, but it just depends on the year. There is always a home for good football players at those programs.
So they can only recruit so many out-of-state players, you're saying?
That's right. So it's different from Kansas and Iowa and Texas because those schools have the opportunity to recruit nationally without really like a very high quota for in-state athletes. Mississippi, at least at this point, has still felt that, look, this is the purpose of our junior college is to serve Mississippi kids. So they have a requirement that you've got to have a certain number of players from the state of Mississippi. I'll be doggone if there isn't a Mississippi school that finishes every year in the top 4 nationally with largely Mississippi talent, right? I mean, they are showing you the depth of talent that exists in Mississippi. They can, I believe the number is 15, maybe 16. Can't remember exactly the number of roster spots that you're allotted outside of the state of Mississippi, but like nationally, I recognize that there's a competitive advantage for other states, but I think Mississippi just has a depth and plumbs the depths extremely well in terms of roster building.
Oh wow, didn't realize that.
Oh, I mean, to Tyler's point of the talent in Mississippi, I mean, when I was playing high school football, John, we were playing in the Mississippi Private School Association at the smaller levels, and there was kids that were just running roughshod over people. I mean, the talent is so immense in the state of Mississippi, from the very top level to the very smallest of private school that has 11 kids on the roster out there competing. Tyler Springs has joined us today. Man, Tyler, this show's called The Sports Buffet, and a guest like you is the exact reason why. It's just a plate full of different sports and different stuff, man. But we thank you very much for joining us today, and we would love to get you back on and talk more sports down the road.
Happy to do it, guys, and really looking forward to everything that happens from here on out with women's basketball and the Showboats and everything else Memphis sports.
Tyler Springs has joined us. Tyler, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks,
Take care.
Man, John, we have been knocking it out of the park today with these guests. John, let's take a quick break, man. When we come back, let's talk a little MLB. Gonna jump into a team that is definitely struggling to start the year, and then we'll also give some very early surprises and disappointments. All that and more right here on the Sports Buffet on the 4 Star Sports Radio Network. Welcome back. John Sturdivant, Wes Pruitt, inside the Sports Buffet. It's been a plate full today, John. I'm getting kind of full, man. I ain't gonna lie to you. Let's talk a little baseball, John. The MLB season is upon us, and it's been pretty interesting so far, to say the least. One team that I follow. There's sometimes when you wonder why you follow teams, and this year is really no different with the Chicago White Sox. Because going into yesterday, John, they were getting ready to make history, and not in a good way. The White Sox yesterday were looking to avoid their first 0-5 start since 1974. And they were looking to kibosh their first 0-5 start at home since 2018. And, I mean, it doesn't get much easier as you're playing the Atlanta Braves. You know, it's not like they suck or anything. So the 0-5 White Sox taking on the 3-1 Atlanta Braves. The Sox would start Garrett Crochet. Speaking of Mississippi, he was born in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, John. I don't know if you knew that. 24-year-old lefty would take the mound, get the win yesterday for the White Sox, but it wasn't without, a little pucker up moment. The Sox bases loaded, down by 1. You can't do it the easy way. You can't win 15-1, or in the cases of any team playing the Rockies right now, just winning by like 17 runs. We'll get to the Rockies here in a minute. But John, when you look at the White Sox, man, they're young. There's talent there. But Crochet was the first opening day starter for a draft pick since 2014, when Carlos Rodon would do it in 2019. And then Crochet did it. He was drafted first in 2020 and started yesterday, 2024. What's your thoughts on this White Sox team, man? Right now, they're not playing real well, as we were talking about. But, I mean, it's what? We've played 5 games?
Yeah, we played 5 games, but good thing today's game just got postponed like within the last 10 minutes against the Atlanta Braves. So now they can just go on to Kansas City, Missouri and play the Royals, because they play an opening series with the Royals starting tomorrow in Kansas City. But yeah, 3 games to start the season at home against Detroit, and you lose 1-0, 7-6, and then 3-2, all one-run games where the field conditions at times were not favorable for their own White Sox and the Tigers, to be honest with you. But I think you just got to take care of your home turf and take advantage of that early start because you definitely play, the Braves and the Detroit Tigers, which Detroit Tigers don't have Miguel Cabrera no more. But you just got to protect that home field, man. Like in years past, you had a decent home record and you had some decent crowds, whatnot early on. But this is a sluggish start so far because now you go to Kansas City, now you go to Cleveland right after that, and they're better than I do. Those are two tough ballparks that anybody can really beat you at and protect their home field themselves. So now you got to do Kansas City and Cleveland back to back, and they'll definitely show how much these White Sox could be. Maybe their young team can produce maybe some wins, hopefully, over that next two road trip against Cleveland and Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this White Sox roster, it's a what's the guy's name? Ty that does all the extreme makeovers. He would love this roster because it's move the bus and it's a whole new team. I mean, it's the only remaining pitcher from 2023 from the staff was Michael Kopech, but you had John Brebbia come in, you had Dominic Fletcher come in. Former Arkansas Razorback. Kevin Pillar was also brought in. Paul DeJong, a lot of people there in Memphis will recognize that name, former Cardinal. Nicky Lopez. I mean, numerous guys, 13 players to be exact, on the opening day roster were all off-season acquisitions, and 4 were acquired during the 2023 season. So it's a new roster. I think there's some gelling that's going to need to happen, obviously. You talked about the youth, John. Shortstop Colton Montgomery is the number 9 overall prospect for the team. Noah Schultz, left-handed pitcher, is the number 50 overall. Right-handed pitcher Drew Thorpe is number 85, entering the 2024 season. That's a top 100 prospects in baseball. And the farm system is ranked 18th currently coming into the year by Baseball America and 20th by MLB Pipeline. That is up from 26th and 30th in 2022. So when you look at trends, I'm a big trend guy. When you look at trends and statistic things, this White Sox organization is beginning to trend in the right direction. Based on wins, not much. So the game's canceled today. That's fine. You go tomorrow, 6:40 first pitch against Kansas City up at the Cough. You got Michael Soroka on the mound for the White Sox. 0.0 for 0 on the season, 7.20 ERA. Going against right-hander Seth Lugo. It'll be Seth. Seth has nothing on the year. Friday, which is the matchup that I'm really looking forward to because it's a great pitching matchup. Eric Friede, guy, and I'm just Fide, sorry, guy I just mentioned, to be coming over to the White Sox against a guy that I saw last week, Brady Singer, right-hander for the Royals, really pitching really well right now. 1-0 in the year with a 0.0 ERA. He pitched 7 innings here in Northwest Arkansas when they came and took on the Naturals and pitched really well. I mean, the Naturals didn't get their first hit in the game until the bottom of the 3rd or 4th inning of that game. So you look at this matchup, plus then they turn around and face Michael Wacha on Saturday at 6:10. And then Alec Marsh, another guy that's pitching lights out for the Royals right now, on Sunday. So when you look at the White Sox, John, they got 4 big games. And, oh, by the way, it's against one of your AL Central rivals and the Kansas City Royals early in the year. This could very well – this is going to be a fun series to watch starting tomorrow night. But when you look at this White Sox team, they're going to need to start getting some wins under their belt. They did it yesterday against a stingy Braves team, and a very talented Braves team at that. But John, when you look at the Royals series coming up starting tomorrow, and we'll get into the Royals tomorrow as well. But when you look at this Royals series for the White Sox, it's early in the year, and I mean, as a White Sox fan, I'm already going, all right, guys, we need to get 2 out of 4 here. I mean, it's a little early, and I'm kind of already in a little bit of a panic mode.
I really don't. I mean, it's early on in the season. You got a point there, but man, you gotta get everybody healthy on the pitching. Also, man, you got 3 players right now on the 60-day disabled list, or IL. They call it elbow issues. So you definitely gotta get healthy on the pitching and maybe bring some arms up from your AAA already. Come on, man. It's early on in the season, but yeah, it all starts with Kansas City tomorrow. But I guess maybe they need Ozzie Guillen back as their manager. I don't know.
Let's not do that.
I'll do that for you, since you're a White Sox guy.
I mean, don't get me started. I mean, all right, I like Ozzie, loved him as a player, enjoyed him as a manager, but I mean, thank God Tony La Russa is out of there. But I like the White Sox manager. He's one of 7 Latino managers in the majors. I think that's cool. I think that's nice to, have a little feather in the cap, whatever. But I mean, Tim Anderson's no longer there. This is a new roster. It's a rebuild. Is exactly what it is. I mean, you can call it a extreme makeover, whatever I named it earlier, but it's a rebuild, is what it is. And it's the problem is you're in the MLB. Do you want to become the Pittsburgh Pirates of the American League? No, you don't. So you need to start winning some games and being competitive in games, even in losses. But you can't start out. You can't start out like that. You were getting ready to be 0-5, and you eked one out against the Braves. You really need to go to Kansas City this weekend and perform well. I think they need to win at least 2 out of 4. I do. I think they will. Probably not, but I would like to see them.
Right.
Well, John, we got some very, very, very interesting news. Concerning the Northwest Arkansas Naturals. So their roster has been released. And I'm pretty excited about it, John. Not going to lie, man. When you look at the roster, you've got, pitching-wise, you've got Mason Barnett. Noah Cameron is back in Northwest Arkansas. Chandler Chaplin is back in Northwest Arkansas. Caden Wallace is in Northwest Arkansas, as well as Peyton Wilson. Javier Vaz is in Northwest Arkansas. Dylan Strum is back in Northwest Arkansas. Gavin Cross, big-time Royal prospect. Gavin Cross is now in Northwest Arkansas. Rivertown, I think that's a cool name. He's from Zachary, Louisiana. But Gavin Cross was the 9th overall pick in 2022, John. So, and Caden Wallace was a 2nd-round pick. So when you look at these guys, a lot of talent on this roster. A lot of fun is going to be had in Northwest Arkansas. We're going to be talking more about them, definitely more about the Kansas City Royals, especially considering they are the AA affiliate. But John, what are just some things, some names that I mentioned there? Is there any surprises to you at all?
To be honest with you, really no surprises. I just know year in, year out, the Kansas City Royals organization, produces pretty well talent, year in, year out, and they always seem to be drawing good fan bases and good attendance to go out and support the Omaha Storm Chasers AAA level, or like you said, the Naturals with the AA level. And I'm glad to see some fans actually go out and support these Royals organizations as of the last couple of years, because I think the future could be very well bright again for the Kansas City Royals organization, not only as a MLB level, but also a AAA and AA level down the road as well. So really, no surprises really here, to be honest with you. I know Coach Shields and everything is going to basically be, hey, opening week is this week for the Naturals. So definitely go out and support the Naturals if you can.
Oh yeah, Arvis Ballpark is going to be buzzing Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You've got the best fireworks show in the state of Arkansas is right there at Arvis Ballpark. And hey, speaking of it, you can get you a ticket. Buy you a ticket. Get on, buy you a ticket. Put in 4-Star Sports Media, and it just may save you $20 off your ticket. John, before we get out of here, man, let's give our disappointments and surprises for MLB. You thought I forgot, but you're wrong because I didn't. So you go first, John. Give me your surprise and give me your disappointment.
All right, for the American League, my disappointment right now is good old Houston Astros starting the year 1-5. Yeah, you got swept against the Yankees, at home, but like we talked about earlier, you got to take advantage of your home turf when you can. And I think the Astros right now is my disappointment in the American League. And then my surprise in the American League, I'm going to go with Detroit. They're 4-0. They're playing well baseball right now. Like they took the White Sox to beat them all 3 games by 1 run. And they also beat the New York Mets in New York as well. So that's one surprise for me in the American League, and one surprise or disappointment in the American League. And then the disappointment in National League, maybe the Colorado Rockies. They had a good spring training, with all these players, whatnot. And now they're struggling hitting the baseball. And they're off to a 1-5 start where they lost pretty much all the games against the Diamondbacks, and right now they're not looking good in Chicago in the Windy City against the Cubs either. So that's my disappointment in the National League. And then my surprise, I guess I'll go with the Cardinals just a little bit, because looking at that West Coast road trip early on in the season where you play the Dodgers and you play the Padres, I'm not surprised they're 3-3. I'm just surprised the way their bullpen has already been up and down, through 6 games as well. Because think about it, you had the Dodgers beat twice in the first road series of the year. And that Sunday game, you had them beat until all those home runs happened, where the Dodgers came back and won that game. So that's where my surprise is, regarding the Cardinals. Just the bullpen issues as of right now to the early start for the Cardinals.
Those are 2 incredible ones. I agree completely with the Tigers. I was not really expecting them to be 4-0 at this point as a surprise. Wasn't really expecting the Yankees to really take off like they are. Of course, I know Juan Soto's there. He's been playing lights out for the Yankees. Obviously, my disappointment's got to be the White Sox. 1-4 on the season, all on the road as well. When you look at the National League, my surprise is the Pirates. To be 5-0, but then also to be 5-0 on the road to start the year, to be sitting in first place of the NL Central. I understand there's only 5 games in the season, but still, you got a 2.5 lead on the Cardinals right now, and you're 6 games into the year. It's very, very interesting. And then, the Rockies. The Rockies and then the Marlins. You're 0-6. You're already 3.5 games back of the Braves, and the season just started. You're not starting off, and the Mets aren't even too much hotter. They're only 2.5 games back. But when you look at the NL East, man, 3-2, 2-3, 1-3, 0-4, 0-6. That's a real beast of a conference. Like I said, the Rockies 1-5. It's not that they're losing; it's how they're losing. I mean, you can't give up. You can't give up 14 runs in an inning. I mean, you can. I watched them do it, but I mean, and then you turn around and I think they lost 11-0 to Chicago yesterday.
11-2.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been outscored 38-3 in that entire series. I mean, you're not going to be very successful. They're already 4 games back of the Dodgers, and the season just started. So, I mean, yeah, and of course, we will revisit this in 2 weeks, John, and these standings will be completely different. Maybe, I don't know. The Marlins may be 0-15 by that point in time. I don't know. But the baseball season's here. It's been very exciting. The Brewers are another team that I'm really enjoying watching. I love their logo. I just think it's classic looking. But no, baseball season's here, man. College baseball, MLB baseball, minor league baseball. Redbirds got a big win yesterday over in Indianapolis. They're playing well. They're swinging the bats hot. Nationals get started up on Friday of this week. Man, John, what a show, dude. We had Eli Savoy started it off with just incredible Ole Miss coverage, as well as everything else we talked about with him. And then you got Tyler Springs, man, what a show. We couldn't do the show with them yesterday just because of some storms and power outages in the Memphis area. At one point in time yesterday, I believe there was almost 40,000 people without power due to some heavy storms that came through the area. So we're hoping all those people are okay. But we just pushed the show back a day, and I'm glad we did because it turned out to be an incredible show. John, any last final thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, my final thought is good luck to Jonathan Bowen today throwing the ball for the Omaha Storm Chasers. He was supposed to pitch yesterday, but the weather also where they were supposed to be playing got hit pretty good. And good luck to Jonathan Bowen and good luck to Hunter Goodman as he still battles. He's going through the AAA ranks right now. He might be struggling hitting the baseball right now, but there's still 5 or 6 games into the regular season. So don't give up on him yet, Rocky fans. I know you'll probably see him in the purple and gray and the white and all that hopefully soon. Good luck to Tyler Gentry out there, and good luck to all the minor leaguers as they follow their journey this year, because it's going to be an interesting ride, not only for the minor league ranks, but also the major league ranks.
100%. We at 4-Star Sports Media completely back that. And as we know from covering the Naturals, things can happen very quickly in minor league baseball. We saw the other night a player went from, I believe it was AAA Rochester up to the major league team, and then he was playing in the game by the end of that game, all in within less than 12 hours. So things can happen very quickly. We saw it last year with Hunter Goodman and his call up, and we saw the same thing with Jonathan Bowen. Jonathan started at the AA level at Northwest Arkansas, and by the end of the year, he was on the mound for the Kansas City Royals. So we'll be diving more into it, no pun intended. We'll be diving more into minor league baseball, major league baseball as well. And once again, guys, hey, are you a sports fan? Are you a concert fan? Do you like just going and buying tickets? Go to SeatGeek, type in your login information. Find you a ticket's over $50. It's not hard to do nowadays. Put in 4-Star Sports Media. When you do, you'll receive $20 off that ticket. You help us, we help you. You scratch our back, we scratch yours. John, it's been a good show, man. I appreciate you jumping on with me. Looking forward to having you back on as soon as we can. You've got great insight into high school sports as well as many other sports around the country. We always appreciate you, man. But for Wes Pruitt, John Sturdivant, and all of us here at 4-Star Sports Media, you have been sitting at the sports buffet, and you have got to be full from all the sports you've gotten today. But we'll be back tomorrow for another plate full. As always, have fun and be safe.